the workshop. So please do come back and join us at that time. So there are a couple of things I wanted to point out. One is over on the table where this laptop is, you can actually join if you're not already a member of the Poetry Society. You can just click on that to open it up. And there's a place you can scan. There's a join us button. You can join immediately. And we're giving away a beautiful collection called Archive, which is South Carolina poetry since 2005. It was published in 2018 and edited by Gilbert Allen and others. And I was just flipping through it. It looks like a beautiful book with some familiar names in there. And Herlong Bodman, Lynn Lawson, Ray McManus, and others, Deborah Daniel. So this might be something that you might be interested in having a copy of if you're joining tonight. So I wanted to start with some really good news, which is that we have winners for the fall contest. Yeah, are we ready to find out who they are? I think so. So let's have our board member, our beloved board member, Charles Watts, come up and tell us who won the contest. Thank you.
I have to look at my phone to do this, so I have not memorized the winners' names. I have to speak into the mic in order to be heard and to give you the names of the winners for this fall's contest. On the 15th of this month, by the way, the spring contests will be over. So if you are enticed to send in some poems and try to get in for the current competition, you can do so between now and the 15th. It's still open. Check it out. Okay, first we're going to go with the DuBose and Dorothy Hayward Society Prize. And the winner is, and she is on the Zoom part of this meeting, Judith Reese, Gospel of the Blues. And the honorable mentions are H. Randolph Spencer and Danielle Verwers. And the judge's comment was, Gospel of the Blues incorporated sonic devices and was filled with incantatory power, which situates the reader in a particular space and time, as if we enter into a shared memory to holler a collective amen. So congratulations. Second prize, the Starkey Flythe Junior Memorial Prize. The winner is Deborah Connor, Legacy. She's been a multiple winner in the past and just a forerunner. She's a multiple winner tonight. Judges' comments. Honorable mentions Lisa Sloan and Ruth Ilg. Judges' comments. Legacy weaves a potent intergenerational narrative using intentional lines and sentences while making mundane images anew, inviting us to rethink what we inherit. So congratulations, Deborah. And the No Rhyme and Reason contest, which is a rhyming contest. The winner is, no shock, Deborah Connor, F. Scott Fitzgerald, Hollywood, California, November 1940. Honorable mentions, Lisa Sloan and Lawrence Rue. Judges' comment, lean and clean use of language. The writer is writing to the end of the line with rhymes that carry the weight without being intrusive. Curiously, they undermine the aggressive posturing of the speaker who writes with such certainty, even as the rhymed words slide into doubt, uncertainty. Clever. The John Edward Johnson Prize, Joan Schumann, a Rosary. Honorable mentions Harold Oberman and Deborah Connor. Judge's comment, most compelling is the simplicity of the imagery and movement from beads to days to beans as the most ordinary things that can carry the deepest grief. The Perception Prize, Ellen Blickman for Snow. Honorable mentions, Frances Pierce and Richard Taylor. Judge's comment, the poet gropes through the mess of language to speak the unspeakable. The focus on its theme allows for no distractions. The Marjorie E. Peel Prize, H. Randolph Spencer, Understanding, honorable mentions, Lisa Sloan, and Elizabeth Robin, judge's comment, Understanding seamlessly weaves vivid imagery and nuanced narrative into a tapestry of rich sounds and colors to evoke both landscape and the spirit of South Carolina. Stephanie Ellen Seiler Memorial Prize, Richard Taylor, Agnes Speaks. Honorable mentions, Judith Reese and Tanner Crunell. Agnes Speaks is a well-crafted persona poem that tells a timely story. It begins with an epigraph with both contextualizes and tonalizes. Okay, and the Clyde Robinson Poetry Prize. Tanner Crunell, Ode from a Grecian Port. Honorable mention, Judith Reese. Judge's comment, Ode from a Garden Port, Grecian Porch, inspired by McLeod Plantation, takes on the voice of a plantation owner admiring his property and belongings. Its lyricism captures the environment with great verisimilitude while conveying the complexities of Charleston's history. And finally, the Susan Laughter, it goes both ways depending on who you talk to, Myers Summer Scholarship. The winner is Deborah Connor.
Deborah.
The honorable mention, Christina Bauman. Judge's comments, these poems are unlike the poems of Susan Lofter Myers. Susan had a very wide perspective on poetry and I can feel her interest. These were fun to read, literary archaeology of the jazz age. She might have said, it's a daring approach in poetry. Thank you all who contributed and congratulations to the winners.
It's always so fun to announce the winners of a prize, I think, and several prizes. Please do get your poems in before February 15th for the spring contest. I have spent a good part of the day with Gary Jackson, even though he and I have never met before. It's been an enchanting day. I've spent actually the time with his poetry, and I think that's one of the best ways to get to know him. At first, I felt that I was reading into him, and then I felt that he was reading into me quite well. When I made it to a poem that featured a loved one with holoprosencephaly, I held again my lost daughter, Joni Waco, who died at 21 weeks in the womb due to another type of genetic syndrome. And it was also with a related heart defect. And I think that maybe we don't speak enough about our griefs. Maybe we don't talk enough about what we have lost, but I think Gary knows how to negotiate between the dead and the living and between the past and the present. In one poem, the speaker recalls how his mother said, if you want to succeed, let them see you coming, before humbling him with a choice of switch or belt. With that kind of mother, what else could he be but a poet? I was troubled and reassured when I left his poems on the other side of the bed, pondering the question, how can family be stranger the closer you become? Which is another one he has asked. I'll borrow from another poem to say, as I introduced Gary, that this was supposed to be a definition poem, but Gary is still writing his definition. And it might be in part, I don't need no cure. I don't need no cure, right? It's a love hangover. He loves to write about music. I noticed that. If you're too young to know what I mean by love hangover, you can read about it. Gary Jackson's taken the gold back. He's been around a long time. He won the Cave Canem Poetry Prize way back in 2009 for Missing You, Metropolis. He has an MFA in poetry, and he found a place as a teacher at the College of Charleston, but he's done a lot since then, and as a poetry superhero. So visit his website, GaryAllenJackson.com, and for now, let's see him in the flesh. And I totally forgot that I needed to announce Jammie first. So I've gone through all of this. Y'all, I'm sorry. Let's start it up over again, and I'm going to introduce Jammie. Thank you for your patience. Jammie Ryan-Huynh is the author of Out of Darkness and an MFA student of poetry at the College of Charleston. And she has been a student of Gary Jackson's and a senior editorial assistant at Swamp Pink Literary Magazine. I think that used to be Crazy Horse. Jammie is a queer Vietnamese Ecuadorian poet from Hartsville, Florence, South Carolina, who has held her own at the Free Verse Poetry Festival. She won the inaugural book prize for poems that tell the story of her family and the ways that story might be ignored except for her voice, which we have the honor of hearing tonight. So excuse me, Jammie, get us started and then we'll transition over to Gary. Thank you.
I'm sorry to disappoint. You have to get through me first. We have to do a little warm up. So my name is Jammie Ryan-Huynh, and I'm gonna read a few poems from. Can you guys hear me? Am I speaking into this? Can you hear me? No.
You can speak as loudly as you like. We have a couple people who need a little extra.
Okay. All right. So my first two poems are kind of about my culture. I'm half Hispanic, half Vietnamese, and so we're just gonna get started with this poem. Cuando mi madre habla. Look at how she smiles, a grin that took years to carve out of stone is taken for granted by strangers who try and pry her mouth open so that it too can be properly colonized. When my mother speaks in su lengua, the timid lady both low, now I'm switching up the English. Both low and slow disappears, and the words corren out of su boca in a litany like sus palabras are a wildfire catching wind raging across el estado de California. My mother thinks into voices, one in which she is una guerrera. She slashes through the English dictionary, her Espanol to Inglés diccionario in hand. She was Theseus in the labyrinth, navigating through there, and there. She slayed the Minotaur with su accento, the American dialect cut down by the rows of her R's. America lured her into the labyrinth, hoping she'd get lost in the myriad of tenses and slang. She made beautiful the ugly words they threw at her, growing grass where they scorched the earth. And then the other, where each word is a damned lake trickling off of her tongue. People look at her like she is dumb. Y sucia. Ella sabe las palabras that claw at her heart. She knows what they mean as they dig at the roots she once proudly claimed. Cuando mi madre habla inglés, it is like watching Prometheus eaten alive after giving humans las llamas de Olympus, forced to chew rocks in her mouth. My mother speaks English. Be grateful that she is speaking English because she brings herself down so los gringos may live more comfortably. When mi madre enrolls me in school, her hand clutches too tightly around my 7-year-old wrist. The teacher talks to us, but I cannot figure out which one of us is supposed to be the child. I stare at the teacher's yellow teeth and listen to the tone that drips from her lips. My fingernails tear into my palms and I squeeze my mother's hand. The teacher's voice grates against us. They don't know the melody that follows the words my mother speaks. They should listen to the music that comes from su boca when we are home and how it sounds como un río rushing through las montañas. Mi madre es una diosa, brimming with the knowledge los Anglo-parlantes do not have the key to unlock, with no obstacles to trip over. Las palabras swim out of her heart to dive into our ears. Listen to how she speaks when there are no shackles on her speech. She conquered the language of conquerors, laying down flags in a land that did not want her. She planted herself digging deep into the earth so that no matter how many times they cut her down, she would continue to grow, wrapping su lengua around their words like she was presenting un regalo. She rewrapped their language, growing flowers in the spaces between words and letters. I had like 5 cups of coffee and I'm like really thinking that was a bad idea. So I'm like shaking from coffee. Okay, this is what I do not say. A few days after 6 Asian women are murdered in Atlanta, a cashier in Publix asks, "Where are you from?" Her eyes never looking up as she scans my oat milk and red vines, and yes, I eat red vines. She does not see the dark bags that weigh down my eyes or the clenched jaw that threatens to spill over with a none of your business and a fuck you. I want to tell her I sprouted amidst magnolias and dogwoods and grew up in honeysuckle bushes. I drowned in pitchers of sweet tea, surviving every sweltering summer in the South, eating boiled peanuts out of bags that dripped with water. I grew up on burnt Waffle House coffee and $5 cookout trays at 2 a.m. I was raised next to cornfields and cows. My cousins were born here, and my family has been here for years, but we will always feel like strangers, won't we? Hartsville, South Carolina will never be the answer, because how could I possibly be from here looking like this? I can't even speak Vietnamese. At each word that slips, something scribbles in my father's eyes, raisins in the suns, his dreams realized at a cost. His tongue catches in the barbed wire of English as he tells me he loves me. The words shred his throat while shame bubbles up in mine. Should I say my father is from Vietnam? Should I reveal how my aunts and uncles watched bodies sink into the sea so they could come to America? My family sacrificed their names for the American tongue. Simon, Michelle, Tony, they try to only speak English in their shops. They're Vietnamese, an attack on American soil. Their nail salons, once American dreams, are now just targets. I realize the first time I will ever see my aunts and uncles' real names will be when they die, on gravestones or in headlines. I want to tell her that yesterday, an old Asian woman was punched in the face for walking down the sidewalk. My grandmother lives alone in California. She survived the Vietnam War, her home napalmed and ravaged. Must America make her feel fear in her home again? How do I beg her in a language I can't speak that she can't walk alone? I want to say I used to dream of whiteness, of parents with no accents and college degrees, of food people did not look at with disgust. I dreamed of melanin dripping off of my skin and a family that I didn't have to worry about because my nightmares came true the other day. I'm not from anywhere but here. Instead, I say me. My family is from Vietnam. The cashier finally looks up, her eyes scanning my face and nods because that is the answer she expected. Awesome. Speaking of family, I got some trauma to deal with, you know. I'll just kick off Gary, you know, really set the scene for him. This one's called Why I Stopped Speaking to God, since we're in the South and what. I remember the boy who raped my older sister wore a gold cross around his neck. It would dangle like a lonely noose reaching for someone to bow into. I remember my father telling me about a floating coffin he sailed in from Vietnam, a boy surrounded by bodies and water, his hands a setting sun. I remember my father's fist coloring my mother in different hues of blue. And then I remember years later, in the aftermath of our Vietnam War, my little sister sprawled across our bed, cuddling an empty pill bottle, my head filled with how we would miss the bus. When crouched under the covers of thick red blankets in the midst of a southern summer, listening to the roar of my father's sermon of obscenities into my mother's ears, I prayed, listening to my sister gasp for breath every night in her sleep, never seeing the ghost that haunted her skin. I prayed he wouldn't come home as my father stumbled in every night, an angry drunk that spoke with hands that flew into my face, ripping the tears off my cheek. I prayed the devil would take my father early. The ground splitting beneath his feet, he would feel the fear of his wife and 5 daughters multiplied as the flames licked up his body. God did not answer, but my mother did. She stepped into the role of Jesus, my father's hands, a crown of thorns around her neck. I stopped praying. My hands lay lonely like forgotten landmines when touched from exploding. I stopped praying for a house not crawling with roaches and mold. I stopped praying for a father that could leave dead bodies in their graves. I stopped praying after watching my mother's body stiffen, her limbs retracting, and her face turning blue. I stopped praying after I prayed to God to deny her heaven so she would stay to suffer with us in my father's hell. Jesus was shoved into the trunk of my car and God was thrown into a fountain for good luck to be picked up by the boys with golden crosses. God, did you see how my mother's lips bloomed roses at the corners? Or father and her waltzed dense into the yellowing walls? God, you were supposed to walk my sister home. You were supposed to warn her that the devil could be someone she knows. God, how come you only save your sons? Yeah, I think I'll read 2 more poems. I don't even know where I am time-wise. I'm not the main event. So. All right, this is called Bless Me, Father. Bless me, Father, with all of your sins, for you have made a poet out of me, no son to sacrifice at the cross. You left me so full of words, they rip through sloppily stitched wounds, and each time I write, all I see is red. I cannot touch the page without smearing each poem with the rubies that drip from the edge of my mother's mouth. I scream at you to stop. I hear echoes of your fists each time my pen touches paper. You scatter my words like the glass we cleaned each morning. Green shards of Heineken reflect the rays of sun, but there's still nothing beautiful about this violence. Anger must be hereditary because my fists fly to brick walls when I hear your voice boom in my head, profanity, screaming at my mother and a daughter you never wanted. My body houses 2 people, a mother and a father, an unholy trinity. I do nothing but watch you attack her, beating her out of my poems until all I can write about is you and you and you. Let me write until there's nothing left to write. Let me write about my mother's hair or how she carries me to bed. Bless me, Father, with all of your sins, for I will not die with them. Let me pray, our mother who is our heaven, give me the words to slay Goliath. You made a poet out of me, Father, but I wish I could have made a father out of you. This one is the last poem in my book to kind of wrap things up. I can't stop writing about my father. I'm trying to write a poem that is not about my father, where he is not even a cloud or a ghost or even a name, but somehow he bludgeons his way into the title page, knifing apart the letters to make space for himself, leaving so many ink carcasses in the graveyard of drafts beneath my desk. He rips the pen from my hand, intruding on the memories of my mother's smile as he frowns her face, forcing her lips down, so all I can remember is how he planted plums on her skin, how each kiss seared into her eyes, and how his touch sent warms writhing around her stomach. Did my mother ever regret my sisters and I were ever born? I don't want to write that. I don't want to write about my father. I don't want his fist bruising my memories of playing outside with my sisters, the 5 of us wiping mulberry juices on our shirts, blue teeth and drunk off of honeysuckles we'd spend hours picking. Cross-legged in the grass, we sit in a rare silence until my father's voice trumpets across the backyard and blows our laughter to the wind, as dandelion seeds drift to somewhere with better soil. We force ourselves back into the wreckage, sewing the pieces of our mother together, wondering when we will be next. I want to beg my mother and sisters to stay and promise them a different story, a place in my poems, a slice of the sun on a platter, but my father has snatched my poem away again, and like all the others, dangles it above his lighter until all of us are just ashes in the night. I'm gonna read one last poem because Gary hasn't heard this one yet. All right, a letter to the last Graywolf Press. Did your heart not break with every song you sang when no flutter of wings approached? Did you not want to dive into the ocean? Your song drifted across clear crystal waves and lush green forest floors, yet no song drifted back to you. Is it better to think no one answered or to know there was no one left? We thought it would be cruel to tell you that no one would ever answer, and so we listened and recorded a song not meant for our ears, because that's what humans do. We take the things we destroy. Your beautiful song is forever in our archives, replicated by a machine, a reminder of what humans do to this earth. Can I say I'm sorry? I would have answered if I could. I'm not sure you would have cared for a human's touch, but is it not better than no touch, to feel the warmth of a body, even if it's of one that destroyed your home? No, I understand. I know your answer. When you disappeared into the forest, never to be heard again, I would have also chosen death over eating from our hands. Thank you. Thank you, guys.
Pulling out my phone, not because I'm going to read from it, but I could, but I'm just setting a quick timer. Okay, can everybody hear me okay? Yes, yes, okay. I heard one no, no, yes, all right. I'll use my speaking voice as well. So I just wanted to thank the Poetry Society. I wanted to thank Danielle DeChiveris, who I don't think is here, but maybe is watching on Zoom. Tamara for putting this together, and a big thank you to Jammie for sharing the stage, and I know doing this last minute thing to help this old man. And every time I hear you read, I already look forward to the next time we get to share our poems with each other. If it wasn't clear, Jammie and I both were kind of called at kind of the last minute to do this. And in a way, I'm sorry that I'm here, because it means that Tarfia Faizullah is not. And Tarfia, if you don't know, was the original poet who was supposed to be here tonight, and I know she couldn't make it. And so she would probably read from like her new work, but I actually am currently teaching her first book called Seam in an advanced poetry workshop that's specifically investigating first books and kind of how they're being sequenced and how they're put together. So I thought to kind of honor her, I would open actually with a poem by Tarfia. This poem is called En Route to Bangladesh, Another Crisis of Faith. And I won't do it justice, but I will try. And it has a small epigraph at the Dubai International Airport and ending with a line by Cesar Vallejo. Because I must walk through the eye-shaped shadows cast by these curved gold leaves, thick atop each constructed palm tree, past displays of silk scarves, lit silhouettes of blue bottled perfume. Because I grip, as though for the first time, a paper bag of French fries from McDonald's and lick from each fingertip the fat and salt as I stand alone to the side of this moving walkway, gliding me past dark-eyed men who do not look away when I stare squarely back. Because standing in line to the restroom, I want only to pluck from her black sweater this one shimmering blonde hair clinging fast. Because I must rest this Coke cold in my hand beside this toilet seat warmed by her thighs and hers. Here at the narrow mouth of this long, humid corridor leading to the plane, I take my place among this damp, dark horde of men and women who look like me, because I look like them, because I am ashamed of their bodies that reek so unabashedly of body, because I can, because I am an American, a star of blood on the surface of muscle. You should buy like all of her books if you can. So thanks, Tamara, for that intro too. And I am a people pleaser. So this means if somebody references poems, I want to like immediately read them so you can all like hear them. And I'm trying to resist being a people pleaser, so I'm not going to do that. But actually, I probably will a little bit. I'm going to also try to do something new-ish tonight. Like I'm not going to include quite as much banter as I usually do between poems. And I want to play a game with you all, which is kind of guess the persona. So I'm just gonna like read kind of a mix of poems from the first book, new poems, and poems from Origin Story, which is the book that Tamara was referencing in her introduction. Some of them will be obvious who's talking, but I like this idea of like, you don't know who the speaker's gonna be. So it's probably gonna be me or my mother, or maybe my grandmother, and probably a superhero or two. You'll figure it out, or not. You can ask questions if you don't know. You'll see me shuffling paper up here, which is a key that it's new poem, so that's probably superheroes, but who knows? So I'm gonna actually open, and I'm already spoiling it because I think this is the only poem I'm gonna read from my first book called Missing You, Metropolis. Where is it? And this is a poem I haven't read in years. So I figure I'll try it. It's been a while. Emergency. They released me today. At home, my mother is waiting and gives me a 50 and a hug and had to get back to Oklahoma. Jim and Gary come by later. Come walk with me. We talk about the last girl I slept with and how she's dealing. We don't talk about ourselves. Jim wants to see, so I take off the bandages. A scar runs down each wrist, leaving a trail of jagged skin in their wake. Gary sees something in the way I look at those scars, studying them, the roadmap buried under flesh. Later, we pretend nothing's wrong, but I'm living in nostalgia. The moment I'm in is already gone, and I'm looking ahead at the open spread of trees off 17th and Wanamaker, and it's not much further away. I'm invited to stay the night. I imagine riding those veins home, tracing their origin back to the heart, a violent muscle that threshes 70 beats per minute, even at rest. Jim has Monster spinning in the stereo, and one more night is all I have. Play me a song before I go. At home, I take my aunt's keys, 2 bullets, and all the money I saved and find a pawn shop still open down 17th, and I'm imagining those trees again. 6 more minutes till I park the car, escape into the gnarled branches of trees that all point toward the center of old dirt under the lights of dead stars. There's no moon tonight, but I can still feel the worn ivory grip, everything around me used up. One more use, one more night. Hurry before the sun shatters me into pieces. Well, the title gives this away, but this poem is called The Invincible Woman Enjoys Her Night Off. You're full on Cretex and whiskey sours when the power goes out. The blue lights turn black and the record shuts off right as Diana reassures, I don't need no cure. Almost everyone on the dance floor stops with a few people still swaying in silence. Just when you think about leaving, a woman sings, sweet, 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 sweet love into darkness. And a few folks join in and start clapping a beat until everyone's grooving on the floor, spilling drinks they can't see. You go to check on your man in the back room who's showing off, playing pool, sinking each shot without touching the ball. One of his favorite tricks. The power cuts back on when you ask if he wants to split something to eat. And he flashes you a smile in the way men do when they'll devour anything you feed them. Tomorrow, you'll both be hungover, on the job, saving the world from itself for the 100th time. But tonight you're young and invincible. The lights turn red and low. You order a fried fish plate and the grease is so good, you lick your fingers clean. Thanks. I feel like I should tell you, you don't have to clap after each poem. I feel bad because you're gonna like wear out your like hands because these are all like short poems too. And now if you don't clap, I'll feel offended. So that's gonna, we're all fucked either way. All right, you don't really have to clap. So the next poem I'm gonna read is called What If, featuring the Dazzler. If you don't, anybody know who Dazzler is? She's like a superhero, mutant super. Okay, well you'll find out. This poem is kind of about kind of her origin story in a way. Because I read that poem about Diana Ross, now I'm thinking about like 70s in Motown. Summer of 79, and everyone's sitting here eating my heart out, waiting for some lovers to call. And Casablanca Records realizes there's money to be made. So they make some calls, eager to create another superstar, a triple threat, singer, actress, superhero. The famous artist's son designs her, a Black woman leaning over the executive's desk in a white jumpsuit with a neckline so low it's out of view. Short white hair slicked back tight, surrounded by the uncanny X-Men. Though this dazzler is a far cry from the white girl on roller skates. This dazzler is pure Grace Jones, fresh off 3 albums, the next big thing. But the executives disagree. They want more Bo Derek in 10. So the artist's son quits. By the time they turn Dazzler white, things have fallen apart. There will be no record deal or feature film, not even an invitation to join the uncanny X-Men until years later. Imagine what might have been. Grace Jones doubling the X-Men's number of Black employees. Cyclops shaking her hand before giving her a tour of the X Mansion, introducing her to the team before finally letting Storm take her into an office or attic or whisk her high in the sky, anywhere they can be alone and speak honestly about working alongside all these white folks. Grace Jones would ask, how is it really working here? What's the culture like? And do you feel lonely sometimes? And Storm would respond, the pay isn't great, but it's a good job. And sometimes you get to fly and see things no one else ever gets to see. It's important for us to work in these spaces. And I'm glad you're here. I'm so happy you're here. It's a conversation some of us have had before. I did when I first started teaching here. And the colleague who talked to me and became my dear friend over our shared love of comics had the same conversation when she interviewed at the same college. She's no longer here because she died. And I feel more alone than I've ever felt in a long time, because all my friends are slowly being erased. Because even though I own every issue of Dazzler, she's no Grace Jones. The song that's being referenced in that first couplet is by Donna Summer, by the way. I should have said that. Let's see. So I'll read a couple from Origin Story. This one's called Interview Featuring Boy in Wheelchair. It's kind of part of a series of poems. City, I'm going to give away the persona, but City is my mother's sister. Interview featuring Boy in Wheelchair. City, like them white boys, Daddy would take vacuum cleaner hoses and hit her. Mama picked up a glass ashtray and threw it at me. I was bad, I admit that. I would put Mama's bra over my clothes and be outside playing and dancing. People go by just laughing because I was real little. I remember this other girl. We'd go up and down the street and beg for candy. Her brother would try to mess with me, but he couldn't do much. He had a broken leg. You mean he broke it? Or it was perpetually broken? He was in a wheelchair, always trying to feel on me. I wasn't nothing but 7 then. How old was he? He was a teenager. Ah, shit. See, a lot of stuff could have happened to me. That's why I like to stay with Grandma. We just attached to one another. Know what I mean? She was a hard woman. I remember some things real good. You try not to remember shit, but I remember. Is anybody familiar with the Star Trek episode City at the Edge of Forever? Okay, a little bit. If you kind of remember, it was the episode where we're talking like original Star Trek, right? So it was the episode where Kirk and Spock and Bones get like transported to, now I can't remember the era. I want to say like 1940s, right? Or 1930s, right before World War II, right? And they find out that because of their time travel, like the Nazis will win or something. So they have to figure out like how to rectify it. And it turns out Joan Collins is like the guest star. And she's like, of course, Joan Collins, and Kirk, of course, falls in love with her. And then he realizes that Joan Collins has to die for the world to like be set on its proper course. So like, that's like the whole plot of it. Sorry, spoiler. And at the end, I guess it's like a memorable thing because when they go to beam back to the Enterprise, instead of saying beam me up, Scotty, Captain Kirk says like, get us the hell out of here, is what he says at the end. And it was written by Harlan Ellison, I think, which was another like kind of claim to fame for that episode. Anyway, it's a great episode. And my mother liked Star Trek, so I wanted to write a poem kind of about that. This poem is called Edith Keeler Must Die, which was the name of Joan Collins' character. Remember Joan Collins, boy? Remember how her soft lighted face when she first meets Kirk and Spock, and how we knew everything to follow. I gave you worlds and old reruns. Forgive me, but I wanted the company. Those were the years your sister outlived herself. An alternate world where she should have never made it outside the globe of my belly. Cleft newborn, her lip is broken, you said. I said your job then would be to keep her from breaking. I wanted to believe in the multiverse, that the edge of forever is a door we could tumble through, that the averted future, when every time I see you, I'm reminded that she's gone. But I promise you, boy, I promise I won't hate us for it. Coming home late from work, I told you to watch over her. I opened the front door, saw my own body, mirrors and mirrors, leading to my daughter asleep, my son, the hard shell coiled around. You saw me enter. You saw me break into light. I'll read this one. So I have a cough I can't shake, so forgive me, especially like the Zoom mic, which like blares like a bright red every time I like cough too loud. Sorry, Zoom people, wherever I'm supposed to look. Okay. This poem's called How to Eat a Pepper. I burned my tongue on Nashville hot chicken in a Charleston bar while my mother bats away an old man trying to spit game, even though he believes I'm her husband. Which means either she's aging well or I'm aging poorly. I'm trying not to think of my wife's tongue being partially removed in the operating room. It'll be okay, my mother says, and tells my wife before we leave. She nods and squeezes our hands. The students ask if I'm all right when I stand in front of the class and can't speak. It'll grow back, the doctors tell her, certain that things taken from you will return. No, I say, and cancel class. People say the trick to eating spicy food is to eat slow or swallow it whole. Years ago, I went to work just fine after my brother put a bullet in his head. Even cracked jokes for the weeping women at his wake, touched the hand of a man who couldn't stop sobbing into the casket. Almost reached inside myself, wishing someone could have at least picked out his hair. Maybe a drinking poem. Do I have? Yeah, I have. Of course I have. I just have to find it. Maybe a couple drinking. I'll read a couple drinking poems. The first one. People here know Johnny Walker, but sure you know like what the different colors mean, things like that. Okay, so this poem is for you. Ode working twice as hard for fathers and Johnny Walker. I drank that blue a while back, but I give you some black, give you some gold, while my mother, bored, says, show me some poems. So I show her some poems, hand you the bottle. Thank you, son. You keep calling me a word that sounds foreign from any man talking to me. You talking about the weather, complaining about rain, saying the sun doesn't like me today. My father still calls my mother. You say that nigga wants his family back. And we laugh it off, but you fast asleep beside her when my father asks, his voice full of gin and static, why doesn't he call me back? After so many years, there are now two men who want to fill the same space. Drunk, you confess, some nights you dream yourself on fire and wake up howling. You need Jesus, my mother says. You look at her, thinking of the baby she lost, how you cried, wanting to relieve your pain. She told you, it's better this way. Since you ain't working, I'd have to choose who to keep. You wanted to argue, but she's done it before. She's laughing now, reading lines from a poem. You want a man strong as gin. What you think that means? She knows the answer. Shit, I don't know. Now you're wondering if you're failing another test. I chime in, but I'm busy thinking about the red I still have. Should have given you that and took that gold back. Just like Jammie, I really do enjoy writing about family, but I know it gets heavy, so let's read something less heavy. I don't know, it's different heavy. We'll see. This poem's called After the Reading. A woman walked up and asked how the young Black poet the month before could shake with such anger during his reading. Is it really that bad? It can't be that bad, can it? I told her it was, and she said, maybe for you in Kansas, but here in Charleston, a nice Black man held the door open for me and my friends because people respect each other here. And those things you write about don't happen anymore. I live here too, I reminded her. And by here, I meant the world. But she was already off and talking about some professor that was BLACK Black, not Black like you. And when I was in college in the 70s, I couldn't understand why on earth he would come here to teach in a state where people just don't see that type of Black. The woman serving wine at the reception exchanged a look with me, each of us with arched brows asking the other, do you believe this shit? Then another woman tried to help and said, it doesn't matter what color anyone is, as long as you're willing to listen to one another's experience. But those young people who identify as different genders are beyond me. I must have been in a goddamn sitcom when yet another well-meaning woman realized they were all starting to look bad and tried to shut the whole thing down. Let's talk about the art on the walls, how good it is to host such a diverse lineup of poets, how everything's always been this awful, but it's getting better, isn't it? Getting better. That's a true story, by the way. Let's see. I said I would give you 2 drinking poems, right? Okay. Oh, this one's not as fun. Let me find the fun one. I shouldn't have said let me find the fun one because that's going to set up unfair expectations on this drinking poem. You're going to think it's fun and then you're going to be like, that was sad too. It's really not, oh man, it's not. Well, it's all right. All right, this poem's called Anodyne. Bourbon in hand, you believe the world will always be this strange and wonderful. A dog barks by the pool tables. You throw one thigh across my lap and let your glass draw your hand against mine. The dark honey crashes against the rim. A waitress comes and asks if we'd like more. We nod and raise our downed glasses before drowning. Want burns our throats. The only thing to cool this is to spit in my mouth before we smolder back to clay. Outside music dies as it stumbles out of the club. Let us celebrate how distant our bodies are from home, how anything can be exotic. The street view window, the cracked glass tabletop, our own skin. Let tonight end somewhere in foreign territory. Help me believe the lie that the world is too vast to ever be familiar. I'm just gonna read 2 more poems. I gotta retitle these because I give too much away. This one's called The Invincible Woman Earns a Promotion. You take a line of cocaine because why not? Your life is infinite and endless and not your own. And sometimes you wish you could just close your eyes and never open them. And the God you once fought told you that you'll outlive the earth and almost everyone on it. And you'll one day meet that God again. You take another line. You want to chew carbon to coal, but you lack sufficient heat. The woman next to you uses a business card an aspiring hero just gave her, whose name she's already forgotten, except for when she briefly looks at the card, rubbing a smudge of powder off the name. Lucretia. Lucretia should change her name if she wants to make it in this business. A young man takes off his shirt and tells you he's your biggest fan. He holds a beer can in his hand and it melts into a puddle of hot metal on the floor. So do I make the cut? He asks, and you realize this is a demonstration. For what? You don't know. When you don't say anything right away, he says, fuck you then, and storms off, still shirtless. You want to grab him by his arm and hurl him into the next state. Congratulations, the woman sitting next to you says. suddenly recognizing who you are, and offers you another line. And this last poem is called Shazam. And it's actually not in the voice of Shazam, Billy Batson, Captain Marvel. I shouldn't have told you that. I could have let you thought it was. All right. And the word soul appears in the poem, but it's Seoul, South Korea, not Seoul as in the speaker. Shazam. I can be onyx under starless sky. I roll out of bed. I can be hot night when even talking makes a body sweat. I can be smog-streaked window, dirty reflection. Soul welcomes me like any stranger. I can be neon, holy cross outlined in red, love motel pink shining brighter. I can be lightning, can be boy, can be man, be shadow. Tonight, I want to walk, be a bottle, half drunk, chipped glass, another brown. Be doorman to darkness, because any metropolis wears me down. Over time, I can be your shot of bourbon, your favorite superhero. Let me be foreigner, your favorite kin, thin machinery worn to good use. I can be weapon, be sand, can be camera, be black-eyed aperture, be polite, be empty bottle, be a wreck of a man when I put my mind to it, when I don't. Thanks.
Gary, would you mind telling us a little bit about the workshop tomorrow?
Sure. Yeah, no, that's okay. So, like I said, like originally Tarfia's workshop was the original setup. And so I haven't had a lot of time to think of it, but I wanted to use actually tonight as a way to maybe introduce the idea of persona. And so the workshop will be, for whoever comes, we're gonna look at different poems that explore persona, both public and private. So in other words, like kind of Superman versus like your mother, for example. And we're gonna, and also yourself as a persona, because I think one of the things you don't realize is that even when you're writing your own voice, that is also a persona. And so we're gonna just explore like kind of those different facets of what a persona poem can do. And then whoever shows up will write our own persona poems, probably multiple like exercises. So yeah.
Great, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you again to Jammie for a wonderful opening, and also to Gary, one of my new favorite superheroes. I'll tell you what a pastor told me once. Superman wears pajamas with your name on them when he goes to bed. Great job. I really enjoyed it. In March 17th, we'll have Jill McDonough and Cora. Yes, thank you, Cora Shipa. And that will be also back here again for the reading and workshop. We're also planning another Poetry Trails event. Should be coming up in a few weeks, 2 or 3 weeks, in the McClellanville area at Buck Hall Recreation Area. And we'll have another contest for that as well. And we were giving away another guitar, thanks to our sponsor, Danny Sciortino. So we're also starting the writers group back, the PSSC writers group, which will be starting in a few weeks as well, be led by Shayna Shanes. So do check our website for what's coming up. And also feel free to reach out to me at any time. I have my business cards over next to the laptop, and I'm happy to hang around and talk a little while also. Thank you again for coming. Have a little more coffee before you leave and mingle, and we'll see you next time. Thank you.
Go, Jake.